Dan the Wheelman here. You've seen me drive the new 2021 Mazda 3 GT Turbo all-wheel drive sedan, long name, cool car. Now it's time to give the hatchback a try, or as it's known in Mazda speak, the Mazda 3 Sport. Specs are the same as the sedan, 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque on regular fuel, 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque on premium fuel. All-wheel drive, 6-speed automatic transmission, and a car that Mazda says has been designed and engineered to do battle not with Hondas, Toyotas, and Volkswagens, but with Mercedes and Audis. Now, when I tested the Mazda 3 Sport's sedan sibling, I did complain about the rear seat headroom a bit, and I hope to find more in the Sport hatch here. Fortunately, there may be a little bit more, but it's not a lot. The Smartie of my hat is still digging into the top of my head here as it bumps against the headliner. I'm going to sit it all, and this kind of got to sit like this. Having the sunroof doesn't help. That affects rear seat headroom as well as it does front seat headroom, so losing that, you get more headroom back here. But I think it's more than that. I think also the Mazda 3, it starts life as a front-wheel drive hatchback. When they move all that all-wheel drive running gear back here, I think that forces the seat up a little bit as well. Plus, I've got these nice, thickly padded seats, which are great for your butt, but not as much for your headroom because that you sit higher as a result of having such thick seats. So, but I've got the armrest, flush-mounted cup holders and stuff like that. No heated seats. It all points to the Mazda 3, even in sport form, not really being a vehicle to own if you're going to be hauling 4 adults on the regular, or maybe 2 adults and 2 really tall kids. It's more about having, it's more for smaller families. Maybe they'll have a child seat back here. If you're going to be hauling 4 adults on the regular, you're going to want a bigger car than the 3. But if you are a smaller family and want to be able to easily haul your wares, you've got a nice flat folding rear seat that does so with one simple motion. Even though this seat is quite far back because I'm a 6'3" driver, this still opens up quite easily, which I love. So we're now sat in the new Mazda 3 Sport GT Turbo. I've got the Vancouver Canucks hat on here, and I've got the Vancouver Canucks jersey there too, the hockey skate jersey. They have just started off their season, so gotta support my hometown Canucks. They split the first 2 games as of filming with the Edmonton Oilers, who I think are one of the favorites in the newly created North Division, which is all Canadian teams this year because of COVID and the fact that they can't cross the border. Edmonton looks like one of the favorites in that division to do quite well, so the Canucks split it with them, with up against Connor McDavid and all those guys, the Oilers, and they did well. So gotta support the team. It's a little bit canted back, this seat. I've played with it a little bit. I've played with the steering wheel reach and rake. I've played with the seat back, the seat bottom cushion. I had a little bit of trouble getting properly centered in here, which is kind of weird because I've always remember Mazdas having pretty good seating positions, and I didn't remember feeling this way when I tried the sedan, which you can see that video right here as well. And I want to thank everybody for watching that. I've got great viewership on that video, so thank you all for tuning into that. I really appreciate it. It feels a little bit more canted back than I remember, which is strange. I've always remembered Mazda having great seating position. Now, of course, they're no Honda. They win the seating position war in almost every segment they're in, it seems. It's incredible what they can do. But this one here, I've had a little bit of trouble, but it is comfortable though. It is very, very soft, very cushy, this seat, that's for sure. Good view out and so on. I like the infotainment system. I've got Apple CarPlay going here. It's caused me no problems at all. And I like how you can swap between Apple CarPlay and the kind of native interface that Mazda offers quite easily, which is nice. Sometimes you got to kind of fiddle around with it to get out to switch between the two. You know, you have Apple CarPlay going, but you can't adjust your digital climate control, for example, from there. You can't adjust your equalizer settings from there, so you want to sometimes go back to the native display, and the Mazda makes that relatively easy to go back and forth, so that's fantastic. But yeah, this is GT spec, so it's pretty much top trim, and this has the premium package on it as well, which adds all sorts of features. It already comes with 12-speaker Bose audio. I've got these leather seats. I've got all-wheel drive, turbocharging. I've got 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. That's on premium fuel. If I were to go down to regular fuel, it's 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. So there is quite a difference there, especially on the horsepower front as well. So, and I mentioned all-wheel drive, 6-speed automatic transmission. That's my only choice with paddle shifters, which is great. Too bad you can't get a manual, but, and I'll say it again here, as I said it back in my preview video of the Mazda 3 GT sedan, this is not the Mazda Speed 3 incarnate. That's not what this is. It was never supposed to be. If it was, you would maybe have a stick-shift transmission, maybe a slightly louder exhaust. Although, as I said before in my last review of this car, the exhaust is pretty good in here. It's still got quite the report to it. So it's an interesting kind of decision from Mazda as you listen right now. That's got some good noise going on there, so that's cool. So this is not the Mazda 3 incarnate. It's not, so that's why we don't have a manual transmission. It's why it's all-wheel drive, and not quite as manic. And to be honest, I don't think it's quite as powerful as the Mazda Speed 3 was either. The last one we saw, which I believe was back in 2013, I think. If I'm wrong, I'll put the correct date on the screen there. So that one I think had more power than this does. So, but that's not what this is. This is why Mazda has chosen not the Volkswagen GTI or the Honda Civic Si or Type R as benchmarks for the Mazda 3. The Mazda 3 GT Turbo anyway. They have chosen vehicles like the Mercedes A-Class, like the Audi S3 or A3. That's what they've chosen to benchmark this vehicle against. So what that means is they want the luxury bits inside, the comfortable seating, a nice red leather down through here, backup camera that's got 360-degree view on it. That is actually, the 360-degree view is part of the premium package. The premium package also adds automatic reverse braking if something's coming up behind you. It adds a heads-up display here. But it comes standard, I believe, with tilt-down mirrors, which is one of my favorite features because I've got great 18-inch wheels on here, and I wouldn't want to be dinging them against the curb as I park because the mirror hasn't tilted down. So the mirror tilts down on its own. I know I can do that myself, but I like not to have to, and with this, I don't have to, so that's fantastic. So lots of great luxury features here, stuff you'd expect to see from more luxury-oriented brands. So that's kind of where they're going, and I'll be honest, all-wheel drive and turbocharging, that's luxury car spec. That's not something you see very often at this segment. The Subaru Impreza notwithstanding, and I guess you could make an argument for the Volkswagen Golf R as well, but that's not something you see very often in this spec in hatchback form, and even less so in sedan form. So that's kind of what they're going for here. That's why you've got the partially digitized gauge cluster here. You've got the new infotainment system here that only this and the CX-30 gets, which is a little more tailored down, a little more black tie than it used to be. Very low profile dash through here as well. So this is a car that is really, it's meant to coddle actually a lot more than you might expect a compact sedan from a non-luxury manufacturer to do. And more than just having all those features, it's genuinely a very comfortable ride in here. It's quiet, it's smooth over bumps. I'm passing over expansion joints now on the Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver. It just soaks up every bump, no problem. You can hear the bumps. I've got those big 18-inch wheels and stuff, so you're gonna hear some road noise there. And plus, I've got winter rubber on too. But you don't feel them so much. That's the weird part. You hear this noise, like, what was that? Oh, that was that bump I just went over. I couldn't tell, couldn't feel it through the steering wheel, which, as we'll see in a minute, is both a blessing and a curse. Couldn't feel it through the steering wheel, couldn't feel it through my butt really or my lower back. Really, really smooth. They've really spent a lot of time tuning the chassis of the Mazda 3. The Jimba Atai kind of feature, mantra, I guess, is the direct translation, I believe, is man and horse. And they use it as man and machine. They really want the human kind of machine interface to be very comfortable in the Mazda. They kind of built the vehicle around the human body, which is really, really cool. And in addition to the well-tuned dampers, comfortable seats, and so on, Mazda also uses its G vectoring control to add both more comfort to the ride and more performance as well. As soon as you turn your wheel in the car, the system senses that, and it'll actually take a minute amount of throttle away, which actually forces the weight of the car over the front wheels. What that does is gives you better grip for turning and more comfort as well. Keeps the body more neutral as you're driving, because when you accelerate, of course, that forces the body onto the back axle, which of course is not as comfortable, and that means you don't have as big of a contact patch on the front wheels as well. So adds a lot of comfort. And in the Mazda 3 Sport, I've got a sport switch here, and more than just modifying your throttle response or how long the transmission holds onto gears, it will also modify the G vectoring control as well to kind of play into a more performance-oriented drive. So this is a really, really comfortable, I'd say luxurious ride from what is essentially a compact hatchback. While I'd say it's a home run on the fit and finish front, it's not necessarily a grand slam. The doors are a little on the light side. The close is okay, but they're a little light feeling, a little bit tinny, and the door handles themselves are really tinny. I feel like I'm opening the door to like a much less expensive vehicle than this. There's no power adjust for the front seat passenger, which is surprising considering this is pretty much the top trim of the Mazda 3. You can get the 100th anniversary edition, but I believe that's just an aesthetic package more than anything else. And then there's the center console here. It's this weird kind of slide and open kind of system, and that's, I guess, okay. And when it's partially closed, you have some access to the storage bin, but not a lot, especially if you have a cable plugged in for your Apple CarPlay, because then it kind of blocks it. But if it's a little bit open, it's kind of rattly, and that kind of bugs me a little bit. You have to make sure it's closed all the way for it not to rattle. Kind of bothers me. And then there's another storage bin ahead of the cup holders here, which if you have a bottle or a drink in there of any kind, it's really hard to get your hand in there as well. The cup holders are fine. I like how they're ahead of the shift lever, so that way you don't have to worry about bumping your drink whenever you reach for the gear lever. But I don't love how the storage bin here is great to have, but it's really kind of awkward to access. And I guess if you're gonna use it, I guess you want to use stuff you're not gonna have to access that often. Maybe some mints, maybe some gum, Kleenex, or what have you. But otherwise in here, like I said, it's a home run. So now we're free of the urban grind and the suburban grind, and it's go time on a nice mountain road just outside of Vancouver here. And remember when I said that the steering is kind of both a blessing and a curse, how you don't feel any like roughness through it as you're driving through the city and stuff like that? Well, now we're in kind of the curse department. You just don't quite have, or I don't have quite the idea that I'd like of what's going on underneath the front wheels. I could feel the grip, but not as much as I'd like. And the steering response is not quite as good as I'd hoped. It's the same feeling I felt when I tested the sedan. If you saw my video, if you did, again, thank you for watching. It just, you don't get the steering response that you'd think, or that you'd even expect from the Mazda 3, which is too bad. Now, it's there, you just gotta trust it. I'm also dealing with a little more body roll here than I'd like, and I'm in sport mode, so I don't feel much like it's much tighter in sport mode than it would be without. So it's more the throttle response and the transmission response that the sport mode kind of plays with. This powertrain is great, though. I'm getting only a slight hint of torque steer as I really kind of power out of these corners, but it's nothing to really worry too much about. And the way this transmission moves through the gears, especially in manual mode, is nice and quick. This is a fast little car that definitely makes the most out of the 4-cylinder turbocharged power that it has. Lots of power to deal with, more than enough power for a vehicle of this size. It's not that big of a car, and I don't have the curb weight in front of me, but I'll put it here on the screen when I get it. So you really get nice response from the throttle. If only the chassis, and this is not something I'd expect to ever say of the Mazda, kind of, answered the bell rung by the powertrain. Now, like we said before, Mazda's adamant that this is not the reinvention or the reboot, if you will, of the Mazda Speed 3. If it were, you might get the sharper steering, you'd have the manual transmission most likely. It'd be a little more manic, but that's not what this is about. This is a car that'll give you some nice power for highway driving and stuff like that, so you're never wanting for more power, you're never worried about making highway passes and so on. But it does soften, Mazda has softened the edges a bit because that's what they're going for. Again, they're going after Mercedes and Audi and even BMW with this and Lexus. So they want to soften the edges a little bit if they're going to have conquest in those markets. Still a lot of fun on this road, no question. But I know that Mazda could make it even more fun in this kind of scenario than it already is. So the 2021 Mazda 3 Sport GT Turbo all-wheel drive, again, long name, cool car, is great in the city. It's got a wonderful interior with very few bugaboos. It's a good highway cruiser. It's fun on a bendy back road. Good fun, actually, but could be a little more fun, as we just talked about. But Mazda does say they're targeting the smaller vehicles from the German and Japanese luxury brands with this latest Mazda 3 GT Turbo. Now, of course, the best way to see how they've done in that regard, I guess, would be to kind of have one of those, or a representative of one of those brands with us here today to drive alongside this one. Well, it just so happens, dear viewers, we can do that because we do have one. And here it is. This is the 2021 Mercedes-Benz AMG A35. It's a small compact hatch like the Mazda 3. It's got all-wheel drive like the Mazda 3, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine like the Mazda 3, and it is one of the vehicles that Mazda says they benchmarked when it came time to design and engineer the Mazda 3 compact. So that's a pretty lofty claim. Let's take a drive and see what's what. Now, I don't have the exact measurements in front of me here, but I don't really need them because already I can tell the back seat in the A-Class is better than it is in the Mazda. It just is. There's a little more headroom, a little more leg room. It's not substantial, but you're not supposed to have substantial leg room in the back seat of a compact hatchback, let's be honest. As long as you can get the kids back here, usually you're good. But it is definitely more roomy back here. It feels more roomy than it does in the Mazda 3. The only thing, though, is I've got very flat seats here, and if I did happen to have two adults back here and I was going on a enthusiastic drive, poor souls, I worry they'd be sliding to and fro in this seat. But what the flat seat does do is it should make mounting a child seat that much easier. Nice flush mount or shallow mounted ISO fixed latches here as well, so that's great. But back seat wise, this is the way to go for me when it comes to these two vehicles. Oh, and of course I should mention that you can flip these seats down. Not too much trouble, although since it is a fixed back, you will have to tip this seat forward a little bit in order to get this to sit completely flat. And there you go, nice flat loading surface. While all that may be true about, all-wheel drive and similar footprint and turbocharging and Mazda using the A-Class as a kind of a measuring stick for the new Mazda 3, stepping into the A-Class is a whole other event. You've got two digital displays in front of you here. I think it's actually one split into two, but whatever, that you can kind of manipulate and modify with these great little thumb pads here on the steering wheel spokes. You've got mood lighting. You've got a cacophony of colors: silver, chrome, Alcantara suede, red. It's quite something in here for sure. Nice thick flat bottom steering with a centering band on top. I thought centering bands were kind of reserved for sports cars and race cars. I guess there's a place for them in hot hatchbacks now too. So this is, and you've got all the telltale bend stuff too, like the round fence and all there, and you've got the touchpad down here and everything. And this is a properly flashy affair, really. It is, but that's kind of that's kind of cool too. I mean, it's the polar opposite of the button-down look that the Mazda 3 now espouses. So that's kind of cool. And even though this is the A35, a lot of these features here you can also get in the non-AMG A-Class as well. So you've got that there. The power is when it really gets interesting, though. This makes 303 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. The Mazda 3 makes 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, although if you don't use premium glass, that number drops down to 310. But while there is a pretty big gulf when it comes to the horsepower, I'd like to see if that's made up, or how the how the Mercedes with less torque feels compared to that Mazda. I wonder which one's really going to feel a lot faster. I have a feeling it's probably going to be the AMG Mercedes, but it'll still be interesting to see which, by how much, I think for sure. On paper, these are two similar vehicles. They're both similarly sized, have similar footprints, similar space inside. They both have 4-cylinder turbocharged engines, both have all-wheel drive, and they're both available with an automatic transmission only, although this one here is a 7-speed dual clutch, and the Mazda, as I said before, it's a 6-speed automatic. The power figures, though, are where things start to get a little bit interesting. The Benz, and I'm going to say Benz because if I say Mercedes, there's a risk I activate my personal assistant here, and I don't want to do that while I'm shooting a video. So we'll say Benz from now on. In the Benz, I've got 303 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. In the Mazda, I've got 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. Now, those figures are only accurate if you're using premium fuel. In the Mazda, if you aren't, that torque figure drops down 310, but it's still more than what you get here. So while there is a fairly large gulf when it comes to the horsepower between these two vehicles, it'll be interesting to see how much of a difference that torque figure makes when it comes to, you know, some of the faster roads I'll drive on in a minute. But for now, I'm in the city, and in the city, the Mercedes, I have to say, it's the firmer riding vehicle. Now, of course, this is the AMG version. It's got a sport tune chassis and so on. But as you cross the bumps and berms in town, you know, sunken manhole covers like this one right here, for example, or that expansion joint there, or whatever this thing is here, you feel it here more than you do in the Mazda. Now, if we were in the A250, for example, which is the more it's the more lower end version of this A-Class, I have a feeling it would feel a little bit different, maybe a little softer here in town. But here in town, this is the firmer vehicle. Now, I can only assume, of course, and we'll find out in a minute, that that's going to translate to a pretty fun experience when it comes to bendy roads. And even when you're in town, as you're switching lanes and making left turns or whatever, you can feel how direct this steering is. It feels more direct than what you get right now, anyway, than what you have in the Mazda. As we talked about before, the Mazda steering, which I said in this video and I said in my earlier video of the Mazda 3 sedan, not quite on the level as I was used to it being when it comes to Mazdas. A little more aloof than I was used to. So this one here is the more direct feeling as I'm here in the city, as I go over another bump there, when I'm here in the city. So I can't wait to see what it's going to be like once the roads get a little windier, for sure. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yes, and now that we are on the highway, it's just as I expected. There is like zero inertia when it comes to this car. It is so quick. Little bit of throttle. I'm in sport mode here, so I'm going to get quicker throttle response, and the transmission is going to be a little quicker as well. Instant passing speeds. Like, this is like, there's not even, I feel like there's not even a second of lag, or even a half second of lag. It's just, before you know it, you're at like 3-figure speeds, and that's the end of it, you know? Like, it's so fast. And what's funny is it doesn't feel, though it has less power than, it doesn't feel much slower than the CLA 45 I drove, you know, earlier. You know, that's the most powerful, that car has the most powerful 4-cylinder engine available on the market right now. But, and it's fast, but this does not feel slow in comparison by any. Like I said, 303 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque are no laughing matter. Notice I'm behind a Golf R right now, which is another vehicle that kind of sits in this kind of segment, all-wheel drive, turbocharged. But this thing is so fast. I mean, you know, good for Mazda for, you know, taking that shot. But, you know, when it comes to straight line speed, I wouldn't say you're not even close, but it's not. It's a tough go for Mazda. Even though it's got more torque, this feels the faster car at almost any speed, really. Accelerating out of any gear, it's just quicker. It's got that great quick dual clutch transmission. This is the faster car. Then again, this is the A35. This is the top spec. Well, I don't think it's top spec. Is there an A45? No, I don't think there's an A35 only. So it is the top spec of the A class in Canada. So you can't expect the Mazda 3 to feel as quick as this does in a straight line, and it doesn't. This is a real road rocket here. This is the kind of car that I don't think I would have pictured Mercedes doing even 5 years ago. I mean, this is the purview of Volkswagen with the Golf R, and once upon a time, the purview of Mazda with the Mazda Speed 3, which, as we talked about before, the current Mazda Turbo is definitely not the Mazda Speed 3 incarnate. It's not, never was supposed to be. But those are the kind of vehicles that you remember. But this is like a pocket rocket from Mercedes. That's the best way to describe it. Man, that's a quick car. It's a lot of speed for in and around 50 grand. I didn't mention it when I was talking about how it was performing in the city. The other thing is there's no adaptive dampers in this A35 either, so you can't even adjust that to try to smooth things out in the city a little bit, nor can you change those to make things more responsive when you're on a windier road like this either. The Sport and Sport Plus modes tend to focus on steering feel, which is really great, by the way. You feel everything through this wheel. Everything. It's like there's hardly even a steering column between my hands and the front axle. It's so granular feeling. I love that about this. It's more so even out here as we're on the highway, even more so than the Mazda is. So yeah, but the Sport and Sport Plus modes, they will modify the steering feel and the weight of the steering, the throttle response, how long the transmission holds onto gears, and so on. But they won't be changing the dampers at all in this A35. Okay, it's time for some turns. We talked about how great the powertrain feels. Now let's stick it in manual mode here. Press a button down by the armrest or wrist rest, I guess it is, and let's have at it. Here we go. Whoa, yeah. Well, we knew about the speed. Let's see how it handles these turns. Ooh, yes, a little more body movement than you're going to get from the CLA 45 I just drove, but talked a little bit before why that would be. But oh, that's good. That is so go-kart-like, man. Holy moly. You really have to credit Mercedes for being able to kind of do such a great compact hatchback. I know they've been doing smaller cars in Europe for a long time, but let's be honest, in North America, this is a brand that's made its name building larger cars and SUVs, larger engines. I don't think it's so simple to just hit a switch and go, okay, let's do a 4-cylinder turbo with all-wheel drive and a hatch, and let's make it this good. Well, they've done that. This is fun on this road here. And you have to give the credit also for letting their hair down a little bit, not having to be so buttoned down. Again, kind of the opposite of what Mazda's doing with the 3. But it just pulls through these turns, pulls out of every turn with such gumption. The twin clutch transmission switches gears so quickly. So just listen to that engine too. Oh, that's good. Listen to that. Yeah, that's what you like to hear from your 4-cylinder turbo. Proper throttle blip on downshift there. This is just so much fun. Pushes to the outside a little bit more than you might think, judging by its initial turn-in response. A little more body roll. I'm on winter rubber here, so I don't have quite the traction I would if I was on the summer tires that the A35 normally comes equipped with. But even with that, that's a proper hot hatchback right there. And just because it has a Mercedes star on its nose doesn't mean that it can't go toe-to-toe with the best in the hot hatch biz, people that have done it for a long time. We talked before about Volkswagen, the GTI, or you can talk about Honda with the Type R and SI and all these. I know these are not luxury brands necessarily, but when you look at the specs and you look at the drivetrains and all that kind of stuff, this is kind of where we're at with even the A35. And thank you for that. Let me pass. And like it's really quite something, this vehicle. As much as sitting inside this and taking it all in is an event, this drive is an event. Just like the exhaust notes, listen to the upshift. Oh yeah, that's what you want to hear from your 4-cylinder. Nice pop on upshift there, really give you kind of punctuate what you're doing. Here, let's listen again. Whoa. That is what I'm talking about. That just gives you that sense that things are happening instantaneously. The steering is such that you can place this thing within an inch of anywhere you want it on the road. It's so focused that way and so easy to guide through these turns. This is a great road I'm on, one of my favorites. You've seen it on my videos before, but even it can't do this car justice. This car needs a track. Seriously, it does. Like, it needs a track. With responsiveness like this, steering, both from the steering, the power, even the brakes, you get feel through the brakes too. You know what's going on through your foot there, and that is, again, not something you can always be said, even at the performance car level. All these aspects, you need a focused venue in which to really push this thing, and a track would be great for that, but it's a lot of fun on this road, nevertheless. That's for sure. Holy cow. Just such, you got that red centering band in your peripheral vision here as you're going along. It just gives you such a sense of occasion when you're at the wheel of the A35 here. It really, really does. Much more than any small, compact hatchback should be able to do. It really gives you the sense that you're in something special here. I have no better way of saying it than that. This is a supremely good piece of engineering when it comes to its powertrain and chassis. Absolutely. So I'm back in the black Vancouver Canucks hat now, which means I'm back in the Mazda, because that's how we started this thing. And we started this thing putting these two vehicles, well, in the end, putting the Mazda3 Sport GT all-wheel drive turbo up against the Mercedes A-Class. Now, admittedly, the A35 is a cut above what I think Mazda's really going for. With this, we're talking more A250, I think, the non-AMG version. But still. Oh, but I should mention, now that I'm back in the Mazda, it is what I thought earlier. This seat seems really canted back, especially after trying what was in the Mercedes. So I'm not really sure what that's all about. Anyway, but that being said, Mazda has done a fantastic job with the 3, even when driven close back-to-back with that A-Class. It's better in the city, is the Mazda 3. It's a smoother ride altogether. Of course, the A35 has a sport-tuned chassis. The A250 would likely be a little bit softer, so that should be mentioned. But this is great in the city, great features. The back seat, though, can't hold a candle to what you've got in the Mercedes. I guess you got to choose. Do you want the flat seats and head and legroom you get in the Mercedes, or do you want the big cushy seats and no headroom or legroom you get in the Mazda 3? I guess that's a choice for you to make, but that's the way it is. The back seat in the Mercedes is better. But otherwise, this is really, really fantastic, and I think it deserves to get cross-shopped. But that being said, what I ended up finding out after driving these two is just the achievements they've both had. The Mercedes A35 is a compact hatchback, turbocharged all-wheel drive. That's fine. But Mercedes is not a brand, especially in North America, that's really known for making small, fast compacts. They make larger vehicles with larger engines. Yes, they had the GLA class come out a little while ago, the CLA as well, and there was the B class there as well. The B class was never really a performance vehicle. Not never really, it never was a performance vehicle. So there's that, but in North America, that's not really what Mercedes has been known for. They've had smaller cars, unless you include the Smart, of course, but that's, again, kind of a different story. They've had smaller cars in Europe before, but not like this in other world markets, but not like in North America. And the fact they managed to make such a fantastic hot hatchback for $50,000, which is not an extremely exorbitant amount for a fast Mercedes like that with 300 plus horsepower, is amazing. It's all you can just take the Mercedes A-Class, it's its body, throw in a turbo motor, and give it some all-wheel drive and say, go, you're good to go. You've got to tune it. You've got to build it so it all works together. And Mercedes has to be commended for doing a great job with the A-Class there. That's for absolute sure. As I close this to try to block some of that sun out. There we go. Well, not much. Anyway, so they've done a fantastic job with that, and that's really, really worth mentioning for sure, regardless of how it goes up against this Mazda here. That's really, really good. And it probably was not a simple thing for Mercedes to undertake, or a simple undertaking for Mercedes to have to go through, but they've done a really, really good job with it. So good, in fact, that I would have to seriously consider that A35 over the crazy CLA 45 I drove a couple of weeks back. I mean, yeah, that car's got the most powerful turbocharged four-cylinder engine available in the market and so on and so forth, does the CLA. But the A35 is such a great mix of the two. It's got the room in it in the backseat more than the CLA has. It drives really, really well. It's not quite so manic. Maybe you don't want to be so crazy all the time. The CLA really has to be on the track to get the most of it. I mentioned that it'd be cool to put the A-Class or the A35 on the track, but I think the CLA really has to go there. The A35 less so. That's a really kind of almost under-the-radar car that looks cool, that's good room inside, and is well featured. So they've really done a good job with that. Back to the Mazda. While Mercedes should be commended for doing what they did by making a very good small hatchback, Mazda has to be commended because they have made it so that this is I would consider this in the luxury compact segment. It's not a huge segment, but with the materials they use and with the turbocharged motor and all-wheel drive and the safety features they have, this sits well there, and they've really done a good job making good on the promise they made with it. To openly say you're going up with luxury manufacturers from Germany and Japan and so on, that takes a lot of little stones to do that, and they back it up with a really, really superbly engineered car that is the one that is probably a better daily driver than the A35 is, even with that smaller back seat. Just keep the kids back there, because of the way it comports itself in the city. It's fantastic what they've done here. How they can have taken their top trim. It's the most performance-oriented Mazda 3 out there. It's also the most luxurious Mazda 3. They've managed to kind of hit both those targets pretty well. So they have to be commended for that too. These are two really cool cars that have come to where they are today through what has to have been some really, really smart decisions on the part of their manufacturers. And that's the real takeaway from this. I mean, you know, you want some sporty turbocharged power with some all-wheel drive, save yourself a few bucks and get yourself the Mazda 3. If you have a little more money, you want a performance Mercedes, but you don't want to have to drop huge money on a C63 and so on, the A-Class is a really, really great option as well. Like, it will get you a lot of fun and proper AMG dynamics for a fraction of the cost of most AMG vehicles. So, you know, it becomes try them both if you want, but it becomes a matter of what attitude you're looking for from your next kind of performance compact, if you want to call these that. Well, you can call the Mercedes that if you want to call the Mazda 3 Turbo that as well. So really, really good. Thank you for tuning into the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. If not, no hard feelings, of course. You can follow me on Twitter at DanTheWheelman and on Instagram at DanTheWheelman as well. So I'm about to turn back into the sun here, so I'm going to bid all of you adieu. Thanks for watching, and sayonara, folks. Go Canucks, go!